when I was 15 and I started going out a little bit more and I was out and about, didn't always make the right choices with what I was doing then. And we were set upon by 3 guys, asked us for a cigarette. We didn't smoke, neither of us did. So, of course, they did the only natural thing and beat me up as a result of that. 2 of them held me back. One of them took the T-bar handle off a scooter and tried to smack me over the head. And I just moved to the side and it caught my ear and tore the ear off the side of my face. Girlfriend screaming her head off. Never quite got the hearing fully back in this ear, because that could have been the end of me. I was nearly killed, I think, on that night. And we saw the guy that had hit me with the scooter handle. And I had the knife in my shoe and I got inside the club with that. And what went through my head at that time was, if I did that, how on earth would I demonstrate that he was the one that had attacked me 6 months earlier? And we left, and I didn't do anything. That was a real sliding doors moment for me, because I was an angry 15-year-old. I was 6'3" already at that stage. I was a big guy, and I had a weapon ready to go, and I didn't take that choice.
Wow.
What changed for me, very luckily, that whole life I've just described, I almost shut the door to that life and opened the door to sixth form life. At that stage, we probably thought we were going to get 6 million-ish for the business. And then that's when our offers came in between 14 and 20 million. All I did, I took the money out. I bought my mum a house, my mum and dad their house. I bought my 2 sisters their houses. I bought my own house. And I took £250,000 in cash out from the bank and went to my dad and on a quad bike, famously, in a Sainsbury's bag, and said, here's £250,000, you can retire tomorrow. And
in cash?
In cash.
Hi, Andrew. Welcome to the Bulletproof Entrepreneur.
Thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to this chat today.
Me too. I'm always intrigued when I talk to entrepreneurs about their backstory and sort of kind of what got them started, and whether or not they came from, I don't know, a business family. Did you come from an entrepreneurial family?
No.
Not at all.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Well, I guess it depends on what you class as entrepreneurship.
Right.
I mean, in fact, yeah, that may be a little bit unfair on my dad in particular. So look, I am your typical council estate family, working class. You know, I had my first job when I was 12,
Right.
stuffing papers in the local corner shop on a Saturday and Sunday morning. So when I was 12, we used to get up at 4 a.m. on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and go and stuff papers. And I made like £10 a week, gave a couple of quid to my mum, and then kept the rest. But no, look, working class family. My dad was in a factory for 46 years. My mum was in Sainsbury's for 30 years. And I grew up with understanding the value of money and understanding that if you wanted things, you had to go out and build it and do it. And also understanding that probably working 60 hours a week was a pretty normal scenario. My dad would go out at 7 and come back at 7. And my mum would always have dinner on the table, but she'd also have a list of 100 jobs for him to do when he got home. But the reason perhaps my dad was a little bit entrepreneurial was on the weekend, he would install alarms in houses as an extra thing that he used to do for cash.
Okay.
And also he was pretty handy with tools. So he would cut out like wooden dinosaurs and things and take them to boot sales on the weekend and sell them with the little stick-on names that you could put on.
Right.
It was like very early customization of things. I'm talking back in the 90s now, before you could do this online. So actually there was an entrepreneurial spirit, but it was driven by the need to make more money to fund the lifestyle. Because there were 3 kids that they were trying to raise. But yeah, that was my background. That's where it all started, really.
But I guess you understood from what you've said, a work ethic.
Yes.
That you got to put effort in. You will get rewarded financially, and I guess otherwise. And seeing your dad doing all those hours.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and also you will get rewarded, but it wasn't so much that. It was more, this was what was needed to sort of maintain some level of baseline. And, you know, my mum was working at Sainsbury's, but she was also a cleaner, and she was doing paper rounds on a Thursday night and that sort of stuff. And I can still remember that now, funnily enough, sort of getting into that detail. So, yeah, I think the value of money, we could never just have what we wanted. It was always we had to earn it, or we had to do something. Even if we wanted some extra money, we could sell our own toys at the boot sale and make an extra like £1.50 each or whatever from what we were doing. But, you know, as a basis for an entrepreneur to begin from, it's a great background to have because nothing has been fed to you and you have to go out and earn everything. And also what I saw in that time was my parents worked very hard. If they were sick, they would go to work. If they had a certain number of holidays, they would never go over it. They always did what was right for the business. And whilst I would say they were treated reasonably by those organizations, they were for the dedication they gave to those organizations. They were never, never celebrated, and they were never given extra things. It was just sort of part of the standard where you just go and you do what the man says you're going to do, and you get on with it. And you have this sort of basic curve of go to work, go and work for 30, 40 years or whatever, and then pay into your pension, then get to your pension, retire and die. And for me, I was quite keen to get off that curve as early as possible, because whilst there's nothing wrong with that, that wasn't going to be for me. And I could tell that from about the age of 10, when I knew I was going to do things my own way.
You were just thinking that way from a really early age.
Yeah, and well, predominantly because I was a difficult child, and nobody,
really?
and as I'm a difficult adult now, I'm an upstart. No one tells me what to do. I struggle with authority, and that's why I could never work for the big corporates. And we'll go on to the story of why I started Pareto eventually, but predominantly I'd ended up in a big corporate for a couple of years and just hated it, and I couldn't work in that environment, and it was a great frustration to me. But I could see very early on, earning money was important. Trying to be the first to do things was important, and I was always a leader from the beginning. So being from Oxford, we used to have bikes and we would cycle everywhere, and we were always out of the house. And when I speak to my mum about it now and say, my daughter's 6 now, so I'm like, what was I doing at 6, and what was I doing at 10? But those sort of early leadership credentials and basic things like how to fix a bike. When I was at university, I called myself the bike doctor. So I used to go and fix people's bikes without any insurance, and all for cash and no tax and everything. But yeah, I really enjoyed that sort of early part.
Right.
But also, there are darker parts of growing within that environment, and being a bit lost and being out and trying to create things for yourselves to do. So when I was about 12, I started smoking. It's that sort of scenario, because I could go into a shop and buy cigarettes at the age of 12, which is completely inconceivable these days.
Yeah.
And then I had my first girlfriends around 13, 14 years old, and then started drinking when I was 15, because at 15 I could go to the pub. And then, or I could go into Co-op and buy £200 worth of alcohol and sell it to all my friends outside. Another little entrepreneurial idea. But certainly in my early life, I think I fell in with the wrong crowd a little bit. The background that I'd grown up in, it was normal to steal bikes and try and sell them, or do things like, set fire to the bins in the park, or just real stupid stuff that as a young person can get you into a lot of trouble. And also when I was 15 and I started going out a little bit more, and I was out and about, didn't always make the right choices with what I was doing then. Right. And there was one particular night where the girlfriend I was with at the time, we're both 15, walking through the park in South Parks in Oxford. And we were set upon by 3 guys, asked us for a cigarette. We didn't smoke, neither of us did. So, of course, they did the only natural thing and beat me up as a result of that. Wow. So 2 of them held me back. One of them took the T-bar handle off a scooter and tried to smack me over the head. And I can still see the scooter coming towards me now. And I just moved to the side, and it caught my ear and tore the ear off the side of my face. Girlfriend screaming her head off. With adrenaline sort of getting back to your feet and fighting them off. Not beating them up, but fighting them off so they stop the attack. And of course, with the mentality, I didn't call an ambulance. I called my dad. Right. Said, with the other ear. Said, said, hey, Dad, I'm in a lot of trouble here. And I remember he drove up with a stack of tea towels like this that my mum had given him. And I held the tea towels. They went and sewed my ear back on. Never quite got the hearing fully back in this ear. But incredibly fortunate that it didn't clonk me on the head, because that could have been the end of me. I was nearly killed, I think, on that night. And I became
wild.
And I became very angry after that time as a 15-year-old. So I started carrying 2 knives at that stage, because I thought, if this is going to happen again, I want to be able to defend myself.
Did these people know you?
No, this was just completely.
It's just a random
completely
attack.
Unprovoked attack. And look, Oxford's a nice place, but there are certain places that you have to be careful in. Completely unprovoked. They just asked for a cigarette. We said no.
Almost killed you in an unprovoked attack.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And that is when I was 15. So I'm nearly 40 now. It's 25 years ago. And I think that's the reality for a lot of young people who are in that sort of environment that I was describing. Got 2 knives, and my dad kindly sharpened one of them in his factory for me, and my mum knew absolutely nothing about it. And I went to an under-18s nightclub in Oxford with the same girl, and we saw the guy that had hit me with the scooter handle. And I had the knife in my shoe, and I got inside the club with that, because they didn't really do checks at that stage. And I had this moment where I had the red rage that went through me, where I'm like, that's the guy, here's the knife, here's the weapon. I could go and stab him in the back of the neck now, and that would be my revenge. And what went through my head at that time was, if I did that, how on earth would I demonstrate that he was the one that had attacked me 6 months earlier? And we left, and I didn't do anything. And that was a real sliding doors moment for me, because I was an angry 15-year-old. I was 6'3" already at that stage. I was a big guy, and I had a weapon ready to go, and I didn't take that choice.
Wow.
So that was early life. And what changed for me, very luckily, I got reasonable GCSE results.
Okay.
And because even though I didn't try very hard, I had a bit of a brain, and I got into sixth form. And then that whole life I've just described, I almost shut the door to that life and opened the door to sixth form life, because I was in a nice part of Oxford in Summertown. All my friends had great relationships with their parents, and their parents had good jobs, and they were all going to go to university. I didn't even know what university was going into, like, being
Because I mean, no one in your family had been
no,
to university
no,
before.
no. So first one, and
Yeah.
actually, my family, they had no aspirations for me to go to university, because
Mm.
that wasn't the background that they'd come from. So yeah, I got into sixth form. But look, the trouble for me was I was really good at buying alcohol. I was really good at organising things. And I was good at getting on with private school girls who had big house parties on a
Right.
weekend. So this was before WhatsApp and
Yeah.
everything. So I used to just be an organizer, and I just used to organize all the parties on Fridays and Saturday nights. And because we used to cycle everywhere, it wasn't unusual for us to cycle an hour and a half into the countryside on a Friday night to find a big house where all the where the parties were, and then have an amazing time. Probably steal a pizza out the fridge and out the freezer, and then drive and cycle home again. But yeah, I felt very lucky in that time, and reflecting now, had I have not got into sixth form, I think my life could have been gone down a very different path, because the people I was hanging around with were trouble to some
Sure.
degree, and I would
Yeah.
have been in that difficult scenario. And then look, I was in amongst people who wanted to go to Bristol to study politics and
Mm.
go to York to study economics, and I was still good at business studies at that stage. It was something
Right.
that really resonated with me, and I probably knew then that running my own business one day was what I wanted to do.
Mm.
The challenge I then had is I wanted to go to university, and my parents didn't want me to go. And when I was 18 and still very, young and emotional and trying to work it all out, I had great arguments with my mum and dad, just saying, look, I feel I have the right to go. Them saying, you don't have the right to go. This is our choice. We can't afford for you to go. You've been messing about for the last 18 years. Are you going to make anything of
Yeah.
yourself when you go there? And they were only doing it out of love. There was no negativity. They were just saying it's going to cost us a huge amount of money to do it, because they knew I couldn't fund myself through it, nor did they have enough money to do it either. So yeah, they very, very kindly agreed that I could go, and they would help fund me. And my mum had some bonds from Sainsbury's that she'd been holding, that
Right.
she cashed in to send me some money on a quarterly basis so I could go there. And so when I got to university, and University of Essex to study business, I felt incredibly lucky to be there.
Mm.
And really, I met my wife on the very first day of halls of residence. So I held the door open for this
Right.
beautiful blonde woman as we were going in. And we've been together ever since. She also was born the day before I was. So if you believe in fate, there's a nice story for you there.
Fantastic.
But yeah, really, then when I got there, I had a girlfriend. I wanted to pay my parents back. And that's probably when the rest of my life started,
Right.
from that moment.
You matured then. You really matured. You got into this is
Yeah.
my part. I'm going to leave my past behind. And I'm going
Yes.
to carve out a brand new future
Yes.
that I want to do. I just want to pause there for a
Yeah.
second and just reflect back, because this whole conversation, I don't want to talk
Mhm.
about business and entrepreneurship and all the rest of it, but I think this is really an important point, an important point in time actually to be discussing it. That
Yeah.
15, 16, 17-year-old
Yeah.
boys
Yeah.
and some of the, well,
Yeah.
I've been one, I've got,
Yes.
a teenage son.
Yes.
You've said, like, from what you've said, like, your environment dictates
Yeah.
a lot of the choices
Yeah.
that you make. But
Yeah.
reflecting back on that, because let's face it, there are a lot of people who are growing up in tough environments
Yeah.
and of different circumstances.
Yeah.
It could be poverty or just various challenges, but there could be a number of different challenges, particularly for teenage children as they're going through that transition from childhood to adulthood. What are your thoughts, or if you were speaking to, and when your own kids get older, what are your thoughts, or what advice would you give to children, particularly boys, going through that transition period in order to try to come out the other side successfully as you've done?
Yeah. I think it's really it's easy to say, but the decisions you make in that early stage can impact the rest of your life. Imagine I'd gone and stabbed the guy, I'd
Yeah.
have been in prison.
Right.
It's simple as
Exactly.
that, and it would have been a racial attack, and it would have just been a whole awful thing for me personally. I think there's a lot of testosterone in 15 and 16-year-old boys, and there's a whole lot of stuff you can read on the internet that's going to justify the way you feel about things. You just have to slow down, breathe, just think about these decisions that you're making. And if you ever get to a point where you're feeling hot-headed about something, that's when you need to talk to people, speak to your friends, speak to your teachers, speak to your mum and dad. Don't try and block them out, because I wasn't very good at that. There were some times when I went out for a whole night, my mum had no idea where I was, and if I come back the next day, that's not necessarily a productive relationship to have with people. I'd also just say, like, for parents, I'm trying to hold my kids away from the internet for as long as possible, very actively making that decision. And there's a whole talk at the moment about old phones coming back, so
Yeah.
3210s with no smart
Yeah.
aspect to them. So certainly I buy into that concept, because this idea that I can text my kids or phone my kids, but they can't do anything else with it. Mainly because I know when I was 15, if I had a smartphone, I would have been in all sorts of trouble.
Yeah.
And especially cameras and WhatsApp groups and everything.
Yeah, and everything that you did would have been
Yes,
recorded, or a lot of
absolutely,
stuff.
and it would have been, and it would have left a footprint. And
Sure.
actually, let's not forget that the internet is a footprint forever.
Exactly.
And so it's really easy advice to give, but it's difficult, as we all know,
Yeah.
in that environment. And
Yeah.
peer pressure is an awful thing, and trying to make friends and be popular and all those things that come with it. But just stop and breathe for a second, because if you are going to do something that's going to impact the rest of your life, you really want to think about that. I was very lucky. I never got into trouble. I never got a record. I never got arrested. I was I was relatively clever about how things were done.
Yeah.
But had I have done that, and I've been with friends that have been in the back of police cars at
Yeah.
times. I remember on one occasion, a friend of mine got arrested and put in the back of a car, and the policeman said, "You're never going to America." That was one of the
That
things.
was it, yeah.
That was one of the things the policeman said to him, because he was going to have a record, and we were only about 17, 18 at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I think, like, those are real things that you need to think about early on. And just be careful what you believe online. I'm a social media user, like everybody is. The amount of hate I see on social media on a daily basis, I'm mature enough to know that that's not going to impact my brain. But if my son is 15 and seeing that every day, it's much more difficult for him to do that. I'm not sure I have the answer other than just think and just
Yeah.
speak.
Slow down, breathe, and
Yeah,
speak to
just
people.
speak to people. Like,
Yeah.
they'll understand it. I think we're all the same, but when we look up to our parents,
Yeah.
we don't think they've ever gone through what we've gone through.
No.
But about 30 years before we did it, they did
Yeah.
it. And like,
Exactly.
my parents are now, there's 5 grandkids on our side now. So it's funny because my dad has changed more nappies now than he did in, in 40 years of being
Yeah.
a father on that side. But he loves it. And, that was part of his thing. So yeah,
Yeah, well, that's the point. Times have changed in
yeah.
many ways,
Oh.
in very positive ways, but
Yes.
in some more challenging ways as well, as you say,
Yeah.
with the internet, with cameras and everything else.
Yeah.
You've got to be extra careful.
Yeah, and I think, like, our family was your typical 90s family where the dad went out and worked 60 hours a week. My mum was trying to work and raise 3 kids at the same time. I'm not sure life is like that any longer. I think you often have 2 people in the relationship that are both trying to work just to try and make ends meet. And I think the differences in how parents look after children has changed quite significantly from what was happening 30, 40 years ago. And I think dads play traditionally now, dads play a much more important role in the upbringing of the kids. Whereas previously, post World War II, it was just go out, earn, and then the mum can stay at home and do it. I think that's changed quite a lot now from what I see.
It has for sure. All right, back on track. So you're at university. Then you enjoy that period of time. But you're thinking at that stage, based on what you just said,
yes,
I want to do something for myself.
Yes. So I'm at university. I have a great group of friends. Everybody is ambitious. They're going to do all sorts. One wants to be a lawyer. One wants to be a policeman. I'm in a good circle of people. My wife is studying art history, so she's going to Rome all the time to look at Caravaggio stuff, and wonderful. In my second year, I started to think, if I'm going to be competitive to get a job after university, I need to have some sort of experience. I need to do an internship of some kind. And at the time, Shell, the oil company, did a scheme called Shell Step. And what they did is they took second-year undergraduates and SMEs, and they linked them together. And over the summer, you did an 8-week internship in an SME, all funded by Shell. I applied for the scheme, and I got connected to a facilities management business, a property management business. I had no idea what facilities management was. I didn't know this is where I'd end up going and, creating my success.
It's another sliding doors moment, isn't it? You just randomly ended up facilities management.
And it's the first time, Rollright was the name of the business, the first time Rollright had ever ran the scheme themselves. And it was like the last couple of years that Shell did the scheme as well. So it's all these sort of moving components. And the other sliding doors moment, there were only 2 people that applied for the job because it was in Chipping Norton. And it was on an industrial estate where you needed a car to get there. And I was the only one out of the 2 with a car.
Right.
So luckily, Charlie, who went on to be an investor in Pareto in the future, he pretty much said, look, you got the job. We need someone to do it. And I did an 8-week competitor analysis, and Charlie was the commercial director. So he taught me all about early sales and pricing and customers and all the sort of learnings around all these acronyms that everybody would use that I had no idea what they meant. I'm still not sure I know now. And I remember on the last day, he took me into London, got me really drunk. We had a great time. And he just said, look, when you finish university, give me a call and we'll see if there's anything for you. So I finished uni. I went in, completed my degree. I got my first, which I worked really hard for. And I called Charlie and I said, hey, have you got a job for me? And he said, yes, I have. And cool. And he promised me a really decent salary, which didn't come off. And he offered me £18,000 as a starting salary and offered me a company car, which was a Mondeo. And I was like, sold. I got nothing better to be doing at this stage. And look, really, that's when my services life started at that stage. Because I think what Rollright and Charlie knew is that if I went into that business, I was going to work incredibly hard for them. And it wasn't about the money. It was about trying to build a career.
Yes.
So I went and look, I worked hard. I was doing every possible hour I could for them. I just bought into this vision of what the business was trying to do. It was about 6 million turnover, so relatively small. We grew it to nearly 12 million over about 4 or 5 years. So we had a good growth circle at the time. And then when I was 24, I became ops director, had 250 staff. And it was a really good learning curve because I had no experience within that sector, but I was a really good people manager and I got stuff done and people could trust me. And, you know, they say give work to busy people.
Yeah.
Well, I was that guy. If there was a new contract, I would mobilize it. And all of a sudden I became very important within that. Simultaneously to that, I went out there in the sector trying to tell the story of a young person who was going through the ranks of the sector. So I was applying for every award I could. I wrote 100 odd articles within the press. I was really just trying to tell this story that the facilities management sector in our membership base, it's about 85% men and almost over half are over 50 years old.
Yeah.
So that tells you all you need to know about how the sector is made up.
Yeah.
So when I was this 23, 24-year-old sort of starting to do things a bit differently, and I won a couple of awards early on. So we did that, great success, and Rollright was a great early thing for me. And then we got bought out by a big German business. So they came over and they're an £8 billion business, bought Rollright overnight. It was sort of out of nowhere. And I did 2 years in that business and I struggled. Because I was the king of a small castle when it was a £12 million business. And all of a sudden I was nobody in this big business. And I had this moment. I'd been there about 2 years, and I'd gone, and I was on the future board scheme, and I was having a good career still within them, but wasn't quite for me. I'd gone out to a posh dinner, loads of drinks, Mayfair, everything's expensive, way more, than I would ever have paid for anything. And I was a bit drunk, and I was in the back of a cab, and I just sobered up, and I looked around, and I thought, what am I doing? I don't really like the guys that I'm with. I don't see a future with what's going on. I need to do something for myself because I'm 26, 27 now, and I just need to think what I want to do. So literally I went home the next day and I said to my wife, I hadn't even spoken to her about it. I said, I'm going to quit. I'm going to start this business. I think that there's some customers I can go back and get, and I think I can get started from. She said, absolutely no way. We've just got a mortgage. This isn't going to work. But I said, look, you've known me long enough now. I'm going to give it a go. And my wife, she wasn't trying to stop the business. She was saying, I know you are going to throw yourself into this 100% if you do it. And, we've just started our marriage and we've got our house together, let's just think about this. But so I went and started. So I handed 3 months notice in. And then by the time I started in August 2014, I was 27. And in my bedroom with a laptop, no funding, no backers, no cash, no processes, no finances, literally nothing, just me and a laptop and an idea. And that is when it started on the 8th of August, 2014.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, again, what I'm hearing here, you do have this entrepreneurial streak from when you were a kid. It's in your DNA. It says who you are, and you back yourself. I'm going to go for this. I'm going to go to university. I'm going to go for this job. And you were very intentional about making a name for yourself. Let's face it. Yeah. Which I also think is great advice for anyone who's like younger and they might be working. Anyone watching this, listening to this in a company, thinking, one day I'm going to go and set up my own company or something like that. Yes. The fact that you get a little bit well known, you win a few awards, you show up. I mean, writing articles, it's just basically the modern version. It's the older version of creating content that people do nowadays. People begin to sort of follow you. This guy's quite interesting. And you're different to the rest because you're much younger than the average person in the industry. Yes. So I'm sure that as and when you set up your own company, that helps. You got connections and contacts and people who kind of know you and remember you. So I think that was very smart that you did at the time.
But look, whether you're going to be an entrepreneur or not, I would recommend that advice to anybody in business. And you have to be careful with AI now, but writing a decent 500-word article that is to the level that a magazine will publish is not a very long task anymore. And you can actually, there's things like pressmaster.ai that you can do that will do it automatically for you. I'm not just saying go out and put a load of rubbish AI content out. That's not the right thing to do. But if you have an idea and a concept that you want changed into an article, it's relatively straightforward to do that now.
Mm.
So, and it's now so easy to create content. You almost need to, because your competitors are going to do it
Sure.
and you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like podcasting.
Yeah.
It's an important skill to be able to do, because this is where I think media is going and
Sure.
the stories
Yeah.
are telling.
Yeah.
So I think the networking piece, the article writing piece, and the awards piece, even if you're not going to be an entrepreneur, it's a great way to grow your network and your name. And then that is, if you're going to look for a future job in a much more senior role, etc., it's the more people you know, the more luck you have in that scenario. And it's not lucky because you've created that environment. But yeah, I think that's good advice for anybody,
Sure.
let alone entrepreneurs at the same time.
Okay, so there you are. You backed yourself. You're in your bedroom with your laptop.
Yes.
And a few connections that you know from the past, of course.
Yeah.
But nothing other than that. So no funding. You just
No,
self-funded, bootstrap.
Yeah. Beg, steal, and borrow.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
just-
And I can explain how we got out of that, because
Okay.
so I'm literally there day one, and my wife's gone to work, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And it's funny, something that people always used to say to me is like, oh, must be so easy being an entrepreneur. If it's a Tuesday, you can have a lay-in or whatever. I was like, well, you can do, but then you're not out there grafting and trying to sort of create opportunities for yourself. Okay. And good entrepreneurs hold themselves to such a high standard that, if you did lay in on a Tuesday, you'd be really beating yourself up about it as well.
Well, they say that an entrepreneur is someone who gives up a 40-hour-a-week job to do an 80-hour-a-week job.
110, I would say on my side, and gives up their weekends. So look, I was really proactive, as one would expect. Now, let's just be clear. I had a brand within the sector. People knew who I was. I'd created that like almost brand persona for myself. So when I was contacting people, it wasn't a completely new thing. It wasn't like, who's Andrew? He's come out of nowhere. I've been working hard for 6 years. I just started working through my contacts, and I was contacting people one after the other. And I had a great relationship with Bulgari Hotel. So Bulgari is a 5-star hotel in Knightsbridge, a great, incredible brand across the world. They just built this new hotel. It was 15 grand a night to stay in the suite. It was top range. And I knew Jeff, the chief engineer, and I contacted him. I said, hey, Jeff, I've started this business now. I would love someone to give me my first opportunity. And he said, yes. And Jeff was an older guy. He's retired now. He had 2 kids similar age to me. One of them was an entrepreneur. She ran a fancy dress shop. That's what she did. And he almost said, look, I know you will throw everything into this to make it work. And he had enough confidence that he could let us have a go at delivering the services. It was a 200 grand a year contract. It was quarterly in advance payment terms. So we were able to start to cash flow ourselves from that contract. And actually, I think the maximum amount of money we would have ever needed to make it work was about 20 grand in total. It wasn't a huge number from a cash perspective. And so we won Bulgari. And what an amazing first one name that was. And then all of a sudden we picked up Yahoo, and then we picked up Twitter, and then we picked up London Zoo. And you started to build up like this momentum really quite quickly. And before I knew it, we were a £3 million business, in like 18 months, 20 months after starting. And really then, honestly, from that point, things just spiraled in a positive way in terms of just incredible growth. And that's how it all began.
Fantastic. Just for anyone who doesn't understand, which was me until earlier today, what do we do? Facilities management, what it actually is, just explain that.
Yeah. I would describe it as property services. So say you have a nice big tower in London that's got 1,000 people in it. Of course, to run that building, you've got compliance, engineering, you've got health and safety, you've got sustainability, rent and rate management. So everything that it takes to run an organization's building. And because most organization, that becomes a very big task, they outsource that task to service providers. For a bit of context, the UK facilities management sector is worth £100 billion per year, 1.2 million people employed within it, and there's 125,000 service providers doing what we did. And that's probably all you need to know when we come to talk about starting something that other people are already doing and how you create your own niche from that. But
that's precisely my next question, actually. So that's what it does. And that was my immediate thought when you and I spoke before. There's buildings. We're in London now. There's buildings everywhere, and they will have people doing exactly that, as you've just described.
Yes.
So again, I don't know too much about it, but I'm going to suggest to you respectfully that it's a commoditized industry. You need people to just run a building. And then in my understanding, any commoditized industry, it's all about lowest cost. If everything's roughly the same, I'll just go for whoever's going to charge me the least. How did you manage to scale at the pace that you did in a established, full of thousands,
Yeah,
dozen,
literally hundreds
loads
of
of
thousands.
competitors.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm still trying to work it out, but no, the reality.
your charm and wit, that.
That's it. It's all down to me.
Yeah.
No. I think the reality was, and people talk about this now. I saw a sector that was old fashioned, outdated, and I think it just wasn't focused on customer service. So you're right, it's
Mm,
commoditized because the big companies are all fighting each other to win a 3 or 4% margin contract,
mm,
which is a silly place to be from a business perspective. But when you're trying to take like hundreds of millions of market share, that is what you need to do in
mm,
that environment. So we came to the market, or I came to the market to go, what do they not do very well? And we are going to do that the best. And we are going to tell customers that we are the best at this thing. And we're going to tell customers that we think this is what they think should be important, not what the big boys tell them. And really, that was probably three things: putting people right at the heart of what you do again, treating people well, paying them on time, getting their expenses right, just treating normal working people with respect, because that had been lost quite significantly, and promoting them, letting them be on your website, let them tell the stories, send them to awards, send them to events, just make it all about the people, because that's what property management is. Number two was bigger companies would go to a client and say, here's how we deliver facilities services. If you want to come and work with us, client, do it our way. Turning it around and going, no, hey, Twitter, how
yeah.
do you want services to work?
Yeah.
And how do you want things to be done? And how do you want the invoicing to happen and the computer system you're going to use and how the people work on your site? We'll build that for you because we know our competitors can't do that because they're too big and they're too rigid. And the third one was ESG. So, and by ESG, I mainly mean social mobility initiatives, so supporting inclusive groups,
Mhm.
and also sustainability. So, being like the leader in carbon neutrality and net zero and being able to demonstrate some real things. Now, those things might sound quite straightforward, but I entered a sector where that wasn't commonplace. And also because I was younger and I was a bit more interesting and I had a social profile and I'm telling the story and I'm a compelling salesperson.
Mm,
That's one of my skills as an entrepreneur. We could convince big brands who had been frustrated at how the bigger companies had delivered so badly for the last 30 years. All of a sudden, there was an alternative. And not only was there an alternative, but we were a great business to work with. We did so much social good. We were great for the environment because, like, our carbon footprint was 100 tons when our competitors was 1 million tons. I mean, it was that literally that stark. And we're going to hit net zero in 3 years when our competitors in 25 years. All those things that we could start ticking a few more boxes. And because it's a commoditized sector, the client sort of takes for granted that you're going to maintain the air conditioning unit to the right
yeah.
standard or my paperwork is going to be correct. But as you got into these bigger brands like your Deliveroos and ASOSes and things, they wanted to support businesses that were doing the right thing. And because we would outwardly support LGBT plus and Black Lives Matter and trans rights and neurodiversity and men's mental health, we would talk about all those things, but not just talk about it or change our logo in June to Pride Month.
Yeah.
We would deliver it. And we delivered 150 different initiatives in those areas. So you can see the richness of the story starts to come together because now we're treating people like heroes that they are. And these may be low wage workers that we're talking about. We are giving the customers exactly what they want, that then makes it a bit more difficult for them to change in the future because now not all our competitors can do what we do. And we have a social and environmental good that starts to tick their ESG boxes. And like I say, this is 7, 8 years ago before ESG really became a big thing. And
Right.
we were just like the pioneers, the disruptors. We were at the top of it at that stage. So that was the sales pitch. And that's how it
Was
started.
this like really intentional from the beginning? Did you say I've got to come up with two or three things?
Yeah.
Because it could be a combination of you could be just personally passionate and
Yeah.
interested in ESG,
Yes.
and or you could think I'm going to sell into this market because everyone else is going to be into this.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
it? What was the thought process?
ESG came later, so that wasn't my initial plan. My initial plan was people and technology.
Right.
So going back to my working class roots, where I'd seen my parents work for relatively low pay for a very long time and not be treated particularly well,
Mm.
it was mainly about trying to show that we could treat those people well and actually we could make them like making sure that our job fit around their lives as much as we could and trying to make them interested to be part of our journey and going on the longer journey. And then the technology piece in terms of everything was cloud based. You tell us what you want, we will build it for you on our cloud platforms that we'd made ourselves. And it was just very straightforward to do business with. As ESG, so certainly social good and like CSR was obviously
Yeah.
a big phrase, wasn't it, 15 years ago? And the environmental part. When I started to see that more scoring on tender documents was going up in that area, It's a very deliberate decision to start wearing that on our sleeve a bit higher.
Right.
Now, we were always a socially good business, but now it was about shouting about it and making sure that it was a core part of it. We got onto a government scheme, which was a £12 billion scheme for contracting on the government side, and 25% of the score was social value.
Wow.
So when we got 100%, we got onto the scheme, we got 100% on that part because we were just the exemplar in the sector for what it took. So yeah, and when you bring all of those things together, it creates a story, it creates a journey. Then I pop into the room with a big box of donuts and say, hey, let's have a chat about this. And you can easily sort of compel people and capture the story with them.
Yeah, really interesting. It's just reflecting on what you just said. Also, in terms of the people aspect and the technology aspect, to some degree. So the technology aspect in particular, you were sort of taking a theoretical weakness in your business. You couldn't compete with all these
Yes.
huge organizations, and you said, "Well, I can't compete with them. So what I'm going to do is do it entirely differently.
Yes.
I'm going to go and ask the customer,
Yeah.
revolutionary. Ask them what they actually want,
Yes,
and
right.
build it because we are nimble enough to be able to build that. So I think that's a
Yeah.
really interesting view that you had. Just there are things that we can do really well. There's things that we just can't compete with. We're a startup, we're an early stage
Yes.
company. So let's
Yes.
find out how we can compete in that market.
But also, it was a sales and marketing thing to try and encourage the customers to look at the good stuff we were doing and also accept that we were going to be fragile at some of the other bits. We weren't huge at that time. Our
Yeah.
back of house processes weren't exceptionally good. We were only a few years old. So, our credit rating was still building and things. And, even when we were 20 million, I'd still get to the end of a sales process and we'd be down to the last two. And they'd say, oh, sorry, you're just too small. And I call it friend zoning because we had such amazing relationships all the way through. And they'd almost say, you're perfect. We love you. We wish we could make this work, but we're going to go to someone that's $1 billion turnover because it's much less risk for us. And like they would say, no one gets fired for putting the big boys into those roles. If you take a gamble on others, then
they're making a decision which could have a career consequences if you don't deliver.
Exactly.
That's the thing. So it's easier.
It is. And that's part of the sales process that you really have to work on those decision makers to convince them that you're real. But that's why the more brands like your Twitters and stuff that we could get, the easier it was to open doors.
Yes.
Especially, I'm talking Twitter 2016. It's a relatively secretive organization, had an amazing following and brand, and they had a lot of incredible tech people working there. And most people couldn't get anywhere near the building, and we were in there running the thing. And well before Musk and that whole scenario came in. And what was amazing with them was on our 5th birthday, they hosted our party for us.
Fantastic.
So literally, they paid for everything. They made us our own cocktail. They got us donut walls and everything. And they just made this amazing place. And we had 150 people turn up to this party. And those relationships, I've just never seen anything quite like it within the sector. How often is a client paying for a contractor's party?
Never.
And that shows shows the depth of the relationship. And of course, my mum and dad are there, and they get a big cake of my big cake of my head made, which then they're all taking turns to stab through the eyes as they're cutting the cake and things. But we made a movement within the sector, and that is incredibly powerful because you have to be authentic to make that work. But you need a marketing strategy that tells that story consistently. And of course, and we haven't even talked about senior leadership and people then.
Right.
I'll go on to that if you're happy.
Please do, yeah.
So, the stat that I love and I'm still incredibly proud of, in the 10 years that I was CEO, roughly, we took on 15 senior people within the business and we gave them sweet equity. So there was a sweet equity, which for anyone who doesn't know, sweet equity, you get given for free, but it only has value when there's an investment event at the end of the business. So you can stay for 5 years, but if it doesn't sell in that time, you don't get anything. And if you leave, usually it goes back in the pot. So it really encourages people to join. And then I had people on very normal salaries joining joining our business that were going to go on this journey with us. Now, in the 10 years I was there, we hired 15 senior people and we had 0% turnover in 10 years. We kept everybody. So as we grew, all those that were there from the very beginning, when we were really scrappy and trying to work out what was going on, they knew the culture. They knew what Pareto was about, and they went on that growth journey with us. And that was probably when we had incredibly quick growth. So, from 21 to 23, we grew from 18 million to 42 million in 2.5 years. When you go through that level of growth, you need people who are on your side. They're part of the bigger deal that's going to happen. And also they just know what the business is about because you can't be everywhere at the same time. So for me, recruitment, we got right on the senior level. And again, it won't surprise you. I wasn't your usual recruiter. I would just throw the CV away. I literally couldn't care for the CV whatsoever. I'd say, let's go and have a burger. Let's go and have a coffee. And I would turn it around again. I'd say, why do you want to come and work for us? Like, what is it about our job that works for you? What are you sacrificing? What are you going home to and getting told off about because I've made you stay late or
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
calling you on the weekend? What does that mean you're going to be doing? Because I will expect you to work hard. I will give you all these things and you'll be part of an amazing culture. But I am going to expect more from you because of the sweet equity and everything that we did. And being a uptight micromanager entrepreneur that I was, that could be difficult for the team members, but they knew there was a higher reason that we were doing it. And yeah, it worked incredibly well. And, you know, they will be lifelong friends for me
sure.
because they're the people that at the best times and the most difficult times were part of it
Mm.
and remained with us. And many of them are still there today.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, you built your tribe, you built your team of people. The culture was clearly
Yes.
very important in
Yes.
that
Yeah.
organization. I'm just curious on this because this sounds like it's a bit of a masterclass on business building,
Ah,
business growth, all these things, recruitment,
yes.
culture,
Yeah.
sales.
Yeah.
Where did you learn it all from?
I made a lot of it up as I went along.
Yeah.
No, look, I always do this, but I go back to my upbringing. I grew up in a really multicultural environment, you know, where my friends were refugees and
Mhm.
all sorts of backgrounds. And when I went to school, I had loads of kids in my class that were severely autistic, and that was just normal for us. And then when I grew up when I went to university, we had a couple of gay guys in our house. It was just like such a rich,
Mm.
amazing, tolerant tapestry that I'd
Mm.
had. And look, if you look at people growing up in those environments these days, there's a culture where maybe you're not tolerant, maybe you're not
Mhm.
open to those sort of things, and you're flying your flags and doing all that stuff with it. So, especially when I was attacked early on, I think it could have been very, very different. But luckily for me, the friendships that I formed just helped me to be very rich and very. I just had lots of people that I loved, and there was just a great camaraderie, and we got to know the families and everything as well. So for me, also not coming from money, I had to do things to try and get the things that I wanted.
Mm.
So, like, I always had to try and find a way to earn some money. And when I was 15, for example, I went on Marks and Spencer's hired 15-year-olds for the first time. So I was one of the first 40 15-year-olds they ever hired. And the training from M&S was really good
Mm.
because it was customer service training. It was a high-end brand. I was in menswear and then on the food side. So I sort of just had all these little snippets of
Mm.
like of gold that all
Yeah.
like sort of created the person I was. And then I worked in pubs and then I was in like alcohol shops and stuff throughout my university life. And you get robbed and you get people
Yeah.
shouting at you and people being sick in the toilets or having sex in the toilets, whatever. And like it's just all part of the rich tapestry of everything that you're
Yeah,
doing.
very, very diverse experiences, and
Absolutely.
your ability just to pick a little bit from each one of those, some of the
Yes.
good things, the more challenging things,
Yes.
and then shape it into your own
Yes.
interpretation of how that works in business.
Yes. But there's probably two things. I was the most relentless person you could ever expect. Don't everything I've just said, don't think I was doing this 60 hours a week. I mean, I was
Yeah.
doing this 110 hours a week probably. And I made many, many sacrifices in that time. You know, my personal relationships were the last thing on my mind. So my friends, for example, just went to the back of the queue. My family, you know, the little time I did spend with them, I would always be doing something else. I'd always be on my phone. I just couldn't couldn't shut down. I couldn't get away from what I was doing. And it was just an incredibly intense 9 years, 10 years that I was going through. Now, I believed that there was going to be a big exit for me, and I believed in what we were doing. And I was very fortunate that with the effort we put in, we just went through this incredible growth curve where we didn't really have any major setbacks.
Right.
We had one bad debt that we caught, which was about 400K. Charity Cowboy took us for 400K and many other people at the same time, but there wasn't really any other major problems that happened. And we were winning 8 in 10 contracts from a sales perspective because
Mm.
we were really picky around what we were bidding on. And we were making EBITDA towards 14% when the industry average was 4%.
Right.
And like we were just, all these metrics were coming out where businesses hadn't been running this way before and the momentum all sort of grew with it. But I always made the right decision for the business, never the right decision for me. And I think that enabled you then to just keep growing and bringing the right people in. And we never did anything dodgy or stupid.
Mm.
It was always just, we know we're going to sell this business one day, make sure it's a great business running all the way through. And that was very, very powerful for us. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm always intrigued by this. You knew you were going to sell one day. Did you
yeah.
know that from the beginning? Did you start to say, I'm going to build this and have an
Yeah,
exit? Yeah.
yeah.
Was it?
In my head. So when
Yeah.
I was with the guys at Rollright,
Yeah.
when they sold to the German company that I mentioned, they made a couple of million each, right, in
Yeah.
that time. So when I started, I thought, oh, this could be a great way to make a couple of
Yeah.
£1 million.
Yeah.
Now, look, for anyone who's ever made money, a couple of million sounds like a load of money. But actually, once you paid off your house, you bought a car,
Yeah.
given your mum some money, actually, there isn't that much left at that stage. So you quickly realize that you are probably going to be aiming for more than that as you go through. But I didn't know that until we'd grown to about 18 million. I had some investment that come in at that stage, which was later after we started, because I needed some more support to grow the business and some more gravitas as we were moving out of that sort of 1 to 3 million range up to 10 to 20 million. And me and the two guys that had bought in, they were like, look, we think we're going to make enough money from a sale now, so we're ready to go. And so we're going to look for private equity investment to basically buy
What were
us out.
they like? Sort of like angel investors? Or,
No, well,
or
they were angel investors, early investors, and they had a role in the business early doors. But as the business got bigger, they just weren't needed, and they sort of moved to the side.
right.
And
But
then
they put
they
funding
they
into
put
it
funding
to,
in,
to help you go to the next stage.
later on.
Yeah.
After I got started, and growing a business to £1 million, relatively straightforward. Trying to get from 1 to 20 million, you need a working capital cash at that stage, because as much as it's great that a couple of customers pay you well, many customers don't. And I mean, cash terms, you're probably talking 90 days, 120 days sometimes. Got 4 payrolls going out before somebody actually pays you.
Yeah.
And all the brands I've mentioned are wonderful, but their payment terms are not.
Yeah.
And actually, so like working capital became a challenge, but we managed it and it was great. And we ended up with about 4 million of free cash when we went to our first private equity deal, which was excellent for us. Because for anyone who knows, you can take free cash out the business as long as it's not going to impact on the working capital. So we went out to private equity. Now, look, at that stage, we probably thought we were going to get 6 million-ish for the business. And then that's when our offers came in between 14 and 20 million.
Wow.
We grossly undervalued what the business was actually worth at that stage.
Why did you undervalue? Was it just you took market averages, seen other deals being done?
Yes, well, we used Rollright as a benchmark,
right?
And no, the guys will probably watch this. I'm still friends with them now, but we used it as a benchmark, which is a terrible idea because they were such a poor example of a business being sold. So So
you were surprised on the upside, which is great.
100%. And I tell the story a bit, but I never forget going to bed at night, looking at my email and thinking the offers had come in and the corporate advisors had put it into a pack. We hadn't seen anything. We thought it'd be about 6, and it was 14 to 20. There were 8 offers in that range. And I was just like, wow, like this has completely caught me off guard. The other two guys are like, well, yeah, let's definitely get out now because that's way more than, and they'd invested a lot less than that. So they made a great return as well. So, but I wasn't done. Because even we sold for 18 million in the end, which is on the internet. Even that amount of money, all I did, I took the money out. I bought my mum a house, my mum and dad their house. I bought my 2 sisters their houses. I bought my own house, and I took £250,000 in cash out from the bank and went to my dad and on a quad bike, famously in a Sainsbury's bag, and said, "Here's £250,000. You can retire tomorrow." And
in cash.
In cash. The bank was very unhappy about it.
I'm sure they would be.
It was Barclays in Bicester. I turned up on the quad bike with a backpack and a Sainsbury's bag and shoved all this cash into it. Genuinely, I've got pictures of my dad laid down with all these 50s next to him. But he was 5 years away from retirement, and he was starting to worry that he would die at work. He was getting to that stage. And like I said, he'd been there since he was 15 and he was 62 at that stage. So, I literally filled this Sainsbury's bag up. The bank were very unhappy because, of course, £250,000, they're thinking drugs or something at that stage. Yeah. But I kept the payment slip that they gave me, and then my dad took it back to another Barclays the next stage with the payment slip. They had to count every single pound back in. It took them 2 hours to do it because they would just count it through all these 50s and 20s. So at that stage, I knew I'd taken a lot of risk out of my life because, like, if I died then, my wife and kids were going to be fine because they had a nice house. My 2 sisters were fine who were on low income. My mum and dad had paid their mortgage. My dad had retired. Like I was comfortable then. And all that, going back to university, when I said I was lucky to be there, I'd almost achieved what I needed to then to say, right, in my conscience, everyone's going to be okay. And
it's really interesting. First thing to say is what a fantastic story that you've, for all the support that your parents gave you in those early days. And actually, funding you through university, which again, frankly, changed the trajectory of your life.
Yes.
For you to go full circle on that and say, there you go, Dad, you can retire early. There you go, sisters, bought you a house.
Yeah.
That must be very satisfying to you.
Yes.
It's vindication, all the hard work, all the effort, you've taken care of your family.
Yes.
And you've de-risked your own life as well.
Yes.
But it's interesting. How old were you then?
34.
All right.
34,
So
35.
you're a young guy.
Yeah,
You're a
yeah,
very
still,
young guy,
still
really.
young at that
So
stage.
you're
Yeah,
34, you're kind of financially secure, your family's
yeah,
financially secure.
yeah,
But this is the other thing I find interesting. But
yeah.
you're not done. What are you going to do?
No,
Go and
well,
sit on the beach?
no, and I wasn't done. And
Yeah.
actually, for anyone who's ever led a management buyout, that's what I did then. So we used the
Right.
private equity money to pay the two guys off, so
Right.
the investors so they could leave. I then, as I said, took a few million myself so I could do all those things. And then that's when we were in that growth curve from the 20 odd million to 42 odd million in the 2.5 years. Because this is where private equity came in and had a real profound impact on the business. As an entrepreneur, I never wanted to invest ahead in anything. I was always nervous because we worked so hard to make the money that we did,
Yeah.
that the idea of investing £1 million into overhead proactively was a ridiculous one. But the investors we had, NVM, and again, our stories on their website, they came in and they said, look, we believe in this business. We've just bought it for 18 million quid. We are going to invest another £1 million into overhead now because we want to catapult the sales and we want to really go for it. And that's what we did. So we went and we hired a whole new C-suite of very senior people. We hired a sales team, a marketing team, a social media manager, some more operational people, finance people. And we just grew up very quickly within that period. And that just supercharged the growth. So in that first year, our EBITDA dipped because we'd had so much investment, which is fine.
Yeah.
Because the next 2 years after that, it absolutely catapulted. And we knew that we were probably on a 3, 4, 5 year situation of trying to get to another exit. And yeah, we grew during that time. And again, this information is online. But when we exited to the current private equity that's there, the first investors made a 420% return on their money in 2.5 years.
Not bad.
And it won't surprise anybody. That's now a case study on their website.
Yeah,
You can go
I'm
and
sure.
find me on there talking about it. So yeah, for me, like private equity was profound for us because when I started, I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
I've probably had dinner with 50 private equities now, mainly at steak restaurants in Mayfair, if anybody wants any recommendations. And, we've had in total, 15 offers to buy our business at one time or another in the couple of journeys that we've done. I have been through 2 proper rounds of due diligence of an understanding. And for anyone who ever does go and sell a business, that's a whole podcast in itself,
Yeah.
preparing for due diligence. Because, I mean, crikey, you're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds being spent on consultants to ask you questions about your business that you don't even know what they mean when they ask you those questions. Those early entrepreneurs, I've bought a couple of businesses now, M&A wise.
Yeah.
Those really early entrepreneurs who are still sort of around the 10 million mark, they're not thinking about the sale that early. And you just need to get yourself ready and have a great CFO in place that's going to understand your financials inside out, and have a great a people manager who understands how your people are all made up and where all their files are and what's in their contracts and the sales contracts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Having been through 2 very intense processes, that's a really interesting time. And it makes you question many things because you've just grown it to this level. You are now within touching distance of millions of pounds going into your bank account. That is now very stressful.
Yeah.
Because now you have something to lose. 2 years in, when I'm still starting and still messing about with donuts and going to networking events, you don't really have anything to lose then because it's not worth anything.
Right.
But then, all of a sudden, when you see the valuations that come through, it's very real. And all of a sudden, like you say, all that hard work, narrow-mindedness, pushing everyone else away because this is what you're focused on, that becomes real. And I was very lucky that on 2 occasions, we managed to get the deal over the line. And on the second occasion, I was able to step back from operational life then and move into a sort of semi-retired state of non-exec, which is where
That's
I
what
am
you're
now.
doing now.
Yeah.
So just to be clear on that, so NVM came in and they bought majority stake. You still owned equity.
Yes. So they bought about 54%, something like that. And then I had
at an 18 million valuation.
Yes, that's right. Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. And then
you kept equity.
Yes, I kept equity, and then we created sweet equity for the team at that stage as well. And then there was still some other equity within the business from the original setup that we did
You
as
kind
well.
of cleaned it up, the
Yes.
kind of cap table and what have you, and then just
Yes.
said, but this is you're personally not done.
Yes.
You've got more to give.
Yes.
They believe in the business, so
Yes.
it was kind of go
Yeah.
again. But only 3 years.
2.5.
2.5.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it could have been a 5-year journey,
Yeah.
but because of the growth that we had in that time, we were in this sweet spot where Pareto now had a brand, and we had an investor behind us who was very ambitious, and they were willing, as I said, to put EBITDA at risk to make sure that we had future growth. I never would have done that on my own.
Yes.
I never would have done, and I don't think anyone could have convinced me that that would have been the right thing to do at that time. But of course, when they're 54% shareholder, it's their decision at the end of the day. But I had to be on board with it, which I was. But but yeah, really, I was then in an interesting position myself because I'd had some money, I'd achieved
Yeah.
all the things I wanted
Yeah.
to achieve. I hadn't bought my sports car yet, or the farm or anything. It was sort of like later stuff, but I then really wanted to work very hard because then I was about trying to grow from where we were to get to an exit valuation that everybody was going to be comfortable with from the investor's perspective. Because the thing that happens is when you give away 50 odd percent of your business, you are sort of in control, but you're not entirely in control.
Mm.
And again, going back to being an upstart and not listening to others, that can be a challenge.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, we had a chairman who was a very strong chairman, and he was really able to control us on our side and make sure the investors were under control and sort of just dictate the process in a
Mm.
positive way. Doesn't mean all those meetings were positive. We
No,
have
sure.
difficult
I bet you
conversations,
did.
and
Yeah.
when you're not growing quite as fast as they thought that you could do, and when they've invested in something and it doesn't work, there are challenging conversations to have. You're all in it for the same end goal, but it's how you get to that point is can be quite difficult. But yeah, no, amazing relationship with MVM and a real success. And like I say, it's a case study on their website.
It's a fantastic story. It really is. So, but what was your? I mean, your wife is still backing you. It sounds like she's a very tolerant lady, and she's because
Yeah.
having achieved
Yes.
significant financial success, she's probably
Yes.
thinking,
Yeah.
"I'll get my husband back now." And you said, "No,
Yes.
just for a day, and
Yes.
I'm off
Yeah.
again." So, what was your because your
Yeah.
kids are very young, but
Yeah.
were you having children at this time
Yes.
or
So we had our first child in 2019. So
right?
our daughter 2019, and then son 2 years later.
Mm.
Look, the catalyst for change was COVID,
Oh,
because
right.
where I was out 95% of the time, and I'll be completely honest, I was out 95% of the time. I'd come home at 6:45 most evenings, give my daughter a bath when she was a baby, hand her back to my wife, and then that was it. And I'd be off again doing whatever. And I felt like I was a good dad, and that was what was going through my head. And look, no slight on any father.
Yeah.
Whatever anyone has to do to make it work, you do what you have to do. Same with mothers as well. But in my head, that was okay. And then COVID hit. And then all of a sudden, I was at home 95% of the time. And my relationship then with my daughter, and then my son was born in 21. So just as we were coming out of COVID, it just changed my perspective on it. And do you know what? I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to be doing all those meetings because I was part of this family unit and I could see. And it was hard for me to keep dragging myself away from it then because I loved it and I wanted to be part of it. Now, I still wasn't very present. Although I was there, I was still thinking about 10 other things at the same time. But I had a taste, and I had a taste of what I wanted to go back to. And you know what? That motivated me. It motivated me to work even harder for another short period of time to get to 2023 when we hope to exit and get to that point. So it's all about using those motivations from those negatives really to try and drive you in the right way. But yeah, that's how it happens.
It's a bit of a theme of your life, isn't it? It's negative events happen,
Yes.
and you say, "What's the how can I
Yeah.
make the most out of this?
Yeah.
What's the positive I can take
Yeah.
from this?" So, just to get a little bit specific, so
Yeah.
was it with your private equity backers?
Mhm.
Did they sort of notionally say 2023 would be like a good time to look around for a
Yeah.
buyer, or
No, no, no.
no?
It was really driven by us. It was the management team.
Right.
We got to a point where we felt we delivered a great return on investment in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
We had a sweet equity team that
Yeah.
wanted to release sweet
Yeah.
equity. I was looking to step away from CEO myself because I knew I couldn't carry on forever. And
Yeah.
like I say, the kids were calling
Yeah.
and my wife was calling. So it wasn't an ultimatum, but it was like, look, we're ready. Are
Yeah.
you ready to explore this? And you sort of have that sort of dance around the
Yeah.
conversation to begin with. Then all of a sudden, the managing partner turns up in the meeting. He's never been to a board meeting in
Yeah.
3 years. And you go, oh, this is good or bad. We don't know
Yeah.
which one it is. And yeah, look, we went out to the market. We appointed corporate advisors. We just said, let's just go and test it. Let's
Mm.
just test it and see. We worked with Grant Thornton on this deal, and so Usman and the team there. And they just started having some quiet conversations. We weren't on the market. We were just telling the market that maybe we were thinking about an event and that we would invite some conversations and things that would come in. I can't go into the specifics of the
Yeah.
deal, but
Sure.
Yeah, that's how it happened. And then
Right.
we got linked
Was it
up.
a protracted period of time? Was it long? Did you
No.
buyers came in pretty early?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a short period of time.
Right.
Look, there was also quite a lot of noise in the sector at that stage because of the budget, and they were worried about capital gains tax
course,
and
yeah,
entrepreneurs
yeah, yeah.
relief and everything that was going with it.
Yeah.
There was an awful lot of noise. What that meant was there was a load of rubbish businesses going up for sale that were doing terrible EBITDAs and no long contract lengths for customers or anything. Pareto as an asset was outperforming on an EBITDA basis, was outperforming on a growth basis. Our CAGR was amazing that we had continued into that period. We had an amazing brand. We were like the sixth most recognized brand within the sector.
Mm.
And we were a multi award winner, probably 30 odd awards at that stage. So it was a great asset, as it
Yeah.
still is today.
Yeah.
And it attracted interest, and we did get offers, and then it won't be difficult to find. We were invested in with Pictet, which is a big Swiss private equity, and that's the process that we're in now. So we're going through growth, and Pareto today is a 70 million pound turnover business, continuing to grow from where we were. And I'm still an investor in Pareto now, so it's within my interest to make sure that it
Yeah.
continues to go well and grow. But yeah, these days I stepped back just before the investment was done. I stepped back from CEO. We put a great CEO in place so that we could go through the deal. And I now act in a non-exec capacity,
Right.
just supporting and playing the founder role and
Sure.
telling the story and networking, funnily enough.
Yeah,
Back doing the
back to doing
networking
that,
and drinking the wine and just making sure we're telling that positive story about how we've transitioned from an SME really to a medium enterprise now. And I don't know when you become a larger business, maybe over 100 million or so, but we're going towards that sort of level, and we're on an aggressive M&A curve as well, because the opportunity to buy businesses at a certain EBITDA multiple and group them all together and sell them for a higher. So tried and tested method in our sector. And as I said, there's of the 125,000 service providers, 93% of those are under 1 million turnover.
Right.
So like the fragmented nature of the sector is very real. But on an M&A strategy, you want to go and find 10 businesses that are doing under 1 million each. Maybe their EBITDA is 30%, whatever. You can. That is a methodology that you can do. And you can add great skill set to your business quite straightforwardly through that. So I'm quite enjoying that, because it just gives me a view on businesses in a way that I hadn't seen them before. And of course, I get to sit on this side now and speak to the entrepreneur and say, hey, I've been there 10 years ago. I know where you are. Here's my advice around what I do. So
you're able to think much more strategically,
absolutely.
big picture stuff. And it sounds like a really nice setup. And what you also end up almost, when we were talking earlier on about all the big competitors that were sort of dominated, but you're on the journey to become one of them, but hopefully a better version of them. Still very client focused and staff focused.
The FM sector attracts big private equity investment, and there was an enormous deal done with OCS and Italian Service last year, enormous billions of pounds deal.
Right.
And I was with the OCS CEO only a couple of weeks ago, and they're not finished. They're still doing major acquisition. When he joined, they were a 20 million pound business. They're now just over 3 billion, private equity backed. That's made all that happen. And the thing is, the bigger companies just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And actually, a lot of the mid-sized companies get bought out because they need to buy market share at that stage, which is good for us because it removes some of the competitors in that mid-space and ultimately creates a great opportunity for Pareto for future investment when we get to that sort of size. But yes, it's about how do we make sure we retain the culture, retain all the bits that makes Pareto brilliant, and ultimately remains a challenger brand to the big organizations who are still very poor, by the way, but they just have deep pockets so they can keep buying more and more market share. And that's the reality now.
Interesting. I want to ask you one thing. You said earlier on, I'm always intrigued people, to the extent they're happy to share it. Did you treat yourself? Did you buy toys? I know you looked after your family.
Yes. Yeah, so look, the first lot of money I got, I looked after my family. And also, if I just reflect on that a bit more, I felt a little guilty the first time I got my money because none of the team did, because the shares weren't shared out. We didn't have sweet equity at that stage. So we'd all been working very hard. Look, I had taken the risk and I started the business, but the millions I took at that stage, I felt a little bit guilty about. So doing the right thing and helping my family, that sort of helped me to deal with that a little bit. When I made the second round of money, when we exited in 23, I'd really done all the things I wanted to do at that stage. So we bought a big farm over in Oxfordshire because I knew I wanted my kids to grow up in a green environment where they could plant their own vegetables and go out on the quad bike and pick berries and make jam and make sourdough and all that stuff, that the quintessentially English stuff that you can do. I was only really frivolous with one thing. I went into a car showroom actually to buy an Aston Martin and ended up buying a bright yellow McLaren 570S with the suicide doors that go up on the side. Completely spur of the moment, not what I went in there to buy. Had it for about 6 months and thought, what on earth are you doing driving around in this thing? But the famous story with the McLaren, because it sort of looks like a bright yellow Lamborghini, it gets a lot of attention, not always good. And I'm not really an attention guy. I don't want to go out there with showing off wealth too much. So if you were ever driving down Shaftesbury Avenue or whatever, people would step out in the road, take a picture, and like there was all that sort of stuff. I was very lucky to go to Buckingham Palace for an event which had 100 business leaders from the UK, and I was one of those. And it said you could drive, or you could take the train. So I decided to drive, and I took the McLaren, and I thought, oh, I'll just go around the side. So I pull round the side, and the guy's there with the machine gun, and I'm like, oh, just coming in for this event. He's like, no, you got to go through the front. So you literally have to take the car and drive through the front gates of Buckingham Palace. And of the 100 leaders that were there, I was the only one to drive. Now, that made me feel like a bit of a knobhead, to be honest.
Yeah.
And after that, I'd had my fun. I'd had it for the summer. For anyone knows, McLarens are incredibly difficult to keep on the road when it's wet.
Yeah.
And it's a proper sports car. So I sold it in the end, and so that's gone now.
But you got it out of your system.
I got it out of my
You
system.
had to do that.
Yeah.
But to treat yourself as well. And
But actually now, the things I spend my money on, I'm actually, as most entrepreneurs, I'm pretty careful with my money. It's in like mid-risk investments, nothing too serious. They spit out amazing amounts at the moment, like apart from the Trump tariffs and stuff, which wiped out a huge chunk. But getting good investment results right now, and that works well for us.
Yeah.
Bought the farm. We're just in the process of buying a nature reserve that's on the side of our land. We've planted our own 1,500 tree forest. For me, it's more about using money to create future opportunities, and certainly for the kids, and just sort of creating the chance for them to understand nature and sustainability and the impact that they're going to have on the world. And
is this also about legacy?
Oh, 100%.
For you, and then for your family and your kids. And
it is. And sort of that's why I like doing things online. I like doing articles. I like doing podcasts, because in the future, they'll be searching for the story. And the surname Hulbert is a relatively unusual surname, so it should be easy enough for them to find. I'll probably make them a Dropbox one day with it all in that they'll never look at. But the forest is a real legacy project for my wife and I, because I love this idea that we plant this virgin forest now. In 100 years, hopefully it's still there, and someone comes down and goes, oh, my great-great-grandfather planted that back in the 20s. He was a bit bonkers, and he drove his quad bike around it, and that's what he was doing. Those stories make me feel good. But also, like, we contacted the local school and say, hey, do you want to bring the kids to see it? And by the way, of the 1,500 trees we planted, 86% died over the summer because of global warming, because it was just the driest summer on record. So now we're replanting them all in January again, trying again. But these are real stories. And I believe global warming is a massive challenge. And I just think that if I can just do a little bit to try and support it and leave a positive legacy, and planting a forest that you'll never see grow, like not to a full extent, is something I find quite romantic. And hopefully in 40 years it will be established. But in 150 years, it'll be an amazing thing for people to come and do. And we've got to design it ourselves and everything. So those legacy projects are important. And I want to leave a positive reputation for myself and for my kids, so they can be proud of what we do. But similarly, I want them to work incredibly hard, and I don't want them to think that they've got 10 million each or whatever coming down the line that's going to make their lives easy. I expect them to work hard, and I sort of like this idea that if they know they can fall back on money a little bit, they can perhaps chase their dreams more than other people would be able to do. And I don't know, say they want to go and be a dancer or a nurse or a photographer, whatever, that it's hard to get going in the first place. I sort of really value the concept that we might be able to give them that opportunity, and they can go and fail, and it's going to be okay. But I don't want to raise kids that are different to how I was raised. I want to make sure they understand the value of money, and it will be no surprise. But like when we go out with my sister and she buys her kids all the toys they want, and we're saying, no, you're not having the toys. You might be able to have one. But we're really trying to scale back so they understand the value of money, and it's
really important. It's something that I come across quite often. Is that dynamic for someone who's, worked your own way up, understood the value of money, and you've got children now, and of course you want to help them, support them, what have you, but also want them to understand the value of money. Money doesn't literally grow on trees, despite the forest and over there. I'm going to probably butcher this, but I think Warren Buffett, he says, when he dies, he said he wants to have his children or his grandchildren to have as much money so they can do anything, but not so much so they can do nothing. It's just that thing. So support them in whatever endeavors they want to pursue. But not so, just a little money. You never need to do any work ever again in your life. There's a great kind of nobility in nobility in work. And achieving something through your own endeavors as well. And you've clearly done that to a huge level.
Well, I mean, look, I'm 39 now, so I've had a couple of years to decompress. Decompression has been really important for me because
Mm.
for 10 years, like I thought about nothing else and in every aspect. And there are three areas: my family and my wife, and making sure that I'm present and I enjoy the time. And I say about finding joy in the mundane. Do you know what? The last 18 months, I love taking the kids to school. I love going to swimming with them, even though it's really hot. I love cooking dinner with them and just being with them and not having my phone or thinking about anything else. And again, sounds really simple, but the ability to do that and be in the moment, I found quite difficult. And now I'm in a stage where I do, and I love it. My second one is my friends. So the good thing about boys is, even if you don't see them for 5 years, you call them up and say, "Hey, do you want to go on holiday in a few weeks' time?" They go, "Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
sounds good.
yeah.
Haven't seen you for a while. Haven't even met your kids yet or anything." So I'm really proactively going back to my friends from sixth form in particular and saying, "Hey, look, sorry I've been away, but I'm back." And also, I am really good at organizing things. So just give me 2 nights in October that you're going to be available. And I've just come back from a trip from Naples and Rome, where four of us went, and we just went and explored together. Just 2 nights, had a load of beers, a load of food, and just reconnected. And you know what? It was like we were never away.
Yeah, it's
And
brilliant. Yeah.
but no one cares. Oh, what are you doing with your money, or how rich are you now?
No one
Nothing. Like they
cares.
could
Yeah.
literally could not care less.
Yeah.
If I try and pay for stuff, they're like, "What are you paying that for? What are you paying for that for? You know, nothing special."
Yeah.
And you know how powerful that is to be back in that scenario where you're just your mates that you were with when you were 16, trying to work it all out again. And I absolutely love that part
Yeah.
of my life now. And we've just after we came back, they sent one of my friends just sent a list of all the places he wants to go, and he's like, "Right, here's the list, Hulbert.
Yeah.
You try
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
go and work out when we're going to go to these places." And the third one is blood donation now. So
Mm.
I've just come from donating blood,
Mm.
as we talked about earlier.
Mm.
I'm within the top 0.1% of blood donors in the world at the moment. I donate every 2 weeks. I have no real reason for donating blood other than every time I do it, it saves up to 36 lives. Because I'm a big person, they can
Mm.
get lots of platelets and plasma out of me. And you have to live your life in a certain way to be able to donate that regularly. So you can't take drugs, you can't get tattoos, you can't go to certain exotic locations, you can't have certain types of sex. There's all sorts of things you have to be careful with. And so for me, it really helps me keep in a really positive, like physical and mental scenario,
Mm.
because I know I'm donating every couple of weeks. And yeah, I absolutely love it. And I think I was number 85 today, donation 85. I'm racing towards 100. And then the next goal is 250 and everything that goes with it. But the guy I sat next to today, he's done 1,000 donations.
Wow.
And you're just like, that is a lifetime of dedication. And I look up to people like him and say, I
Sure.
don't even care what you've done in your
Yeah.
professional life. That tells me everything I need to know about you, because that's an incredible thing. And you get special medals from like the king and things as you go through and donate a lot more. But yeah, I really enjoy that aspect of life. And I like this idea that I'll get in the local Oxford Mail at some point to say, you know, young man does 100 donations, and the kids will find it, and that's a great
Yeah.
story, and it's just another positive thing, and maybe they'll go on to donate, and maybe they won't. But yeah, for me, it's just those positive stories. That's what I'm trying to do right now,
Fantastic.
to leave the legacy pieces. And for anyone out there, look, donating whole blood and platelets, like look it up. The app is so good now for trying to book in donations.
Mm.
I'd highly recommend it. There's only 10,000 platelet donors in the UK, of which I'm one of them, and there's only 800,000 whole blood donors. So they always need more. And the stock levels on platelets are like less than 2 days, and the stock levels on blood are less than a week. So if we have major incidents where we need lots of blood at the same time, there's a genuine chance that we'll run out. So just have a
Right.
look.
Do it.
Just look it
Yeah.
up.
You've just inspired me. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm an occasional blood donor now and again when I remember.
Yes.
So, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
very poor. But you've inspired me.
Oh,
I'll,
thank
I'll
you.
I'll commit to doing that
Yeah.
and give a platelet
Yeah.
donation if they'll
If they'll take it.
accept it. Yeah.
I was talking to a guy a couple of weeks ago. He said I took so many steroids when I was in my
All
20s.
right.
There's no chance that
All
they'll go
right.
anywhere near my blood.
right.
But yeah.
You are living the dream, my friend. I mean, you've and you know you deserve it. You've worked incredibly hard for an incredibly long time. Have made quite a lot of sacrifices, really, certainly in those days a while ago. But now you're in that position where you know life is good. You know,
Yeah.
you've got it really well worked out. And is this the life for the foreseeable future? There's not another business on the horizon. You're still not even 40 years
Yeah.
old.
Yes, that's
So,
right. So
yeah.
I'll be 40 next year.
Right.
So we'll have a decent celebration. As I mentioned, my wife was born the day before.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll have a decent 40th celebration. So for me personally, this is what life is about now. Because I don't trust myself that if I started another business, I wouldn't get sucked into it. And I'm very deliberate with my actions, as you can see. So right now it's still kids.
Yeah.
It's I want to make the most of every moment I can, and I want to do every homework with them and read every book. And I, the richest thing I can say when people ask about what's wealth and all those sort of
Mm.
things, wealth for me is this morning. I have no alarm clock. I wake up because my daughter, who's 6, runs in at 7:20 in the morning, jumps on me and gives me a cuddle for 10 minutes. That's wealth right
Mm.
there
Mm.
because I don't have to be somewhere else. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm not pushing her aside because I need to go and have a shower to do something else. That is so powerful to me. And I would actually give everything up just to have another morning where we got to do that again. And I genuinely mean that. So I feel such a level of gratitude that I enjoy that part of my life because it's very easy to just glaze over that and not. So I want that to last for as long as possible. I'm very aware that my children eventually won't want me to take them to
Mm.
school. They won't think I'm cool. They won't want me doing their homework with them. And maybe at that stage, I start to think about what else I'm going to do. I'm in a fortunate financial position where I don't need to.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to live a life where I'm out in the Bahamas every 30 seconds. I'm traveling most of Europe now and doing all those things, but I'm not trying to live a sensational life. All I ever really wanted to do, and if you ask yourself what your motivation is, my motivation is I wanted to do things I wanted to do, not that people were telling me to do. So the sooner I could get off that curve of the growth curve that I mentioned earlier, the sooner that I didn't have to answer to somebody else, the sooner I didn't need an alarm clock to wake me up every day. That's what success has been for me. And right now I'm enjoying that. And I don't have any ambition to do anything differently. Now, look, people are asking me, can I write a book? Can I do this?
Yeah,
Can I
yeah.
do that? I'm not sure just yet. I'm enjoying the decompression. And I think, as I say, if I'm not careful, I'll get sucked back into doing lots of different bits. I also chair the Institute at Workplace now. So that's just a volunteer position that I have, but I get to sit on top of the sector and meet all the volunteers that work with us, which is amazing. And we have our big awards on Thursday night, and I get to do the opening keynote to 1,000 people. Those things make me feel very special that I'm
Mhm.
able to do that because I started as a volunteer in that sector and worked my way up alongside what I was doing with Pareto as well. So yeah, I'm just not in a rush. I'm sort of, let's just see, go on some amazing holidays,
Yeah.
spend some time together, spend more time with my family and my friends, and that's okay. And I don't need bright yellow sports cars to make me happy. And that's what
Been
you
there,
learn.
seen it, done it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I don't want to write it off completely, because
Yeah.
I was close to a couple of times.
Yeah,
So,
no,
yeah.
exactly. Honestly, really, really inspirational. Thank you so much for spending the time
Mm.
with us. Brilliant story, and tracking all the way back to those challenging days as a
Mm.
young boy, young
Yeah,
man
yeah, yeah,
in Oxford to where you are right
yeah,
now. Really, really positive story for anyone tuning into this from whatever sort of stage of life
yeah,
that they're at. That you can achieve that success, and it's
yeah.
more. And you answered the question. I always do ask people about wealth and what
Yeah,
true wealth is, but you
yeah,
just sort of
yeah.
spontaneously
Yes,
because you're living in it, you're
yes,
experiencing it
yes,
right now.
yeah,
And of course, you have got financial security, financial wealth, but
yes,
that in turn has enabled you
yes,
to live the life that you're currently living
yes,
with no immediate plans to change that anytime
yeah,
soon, which is great. And
yeah,
just kind of knowing that, I think acknowledging it
yeah,
and being present the whole time,
yeah, yeah,
vital. And who am I to say? But when your kids get older, that they'll reflect back on that, I'm sure, and just say
yeah,
what an incredible time that I was able
yeah,
to spend with my parents,
yeah.
with
A-
dad.
And also, look, we take every day for granted as if tomorrow is going to be the same, and
Yeah,
we just never know. And
never know.
I'm in a touch wood. I'm in a wonderful position at the moment where everyone who I want to be in my life is in my life, and I also appreciate that won't be the case.
Yeah,
But I'm very fortunate that I will make the effort to go to my mum's a bit more and have
yeah.
tea, or like I say, go on holiday with my mates, or be there for the school recital or whatever, because I don't know how long I'm going to be able to do that for, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else. So that's really important. But yeah, wealth for me, the money enables you to live the way you want to, but it's time is the most precious thing. And wealth gave me back time. And that's really what wealth means to me.
Andrew, thank you so much. Really enjoyed this. If someone just would love to get in touch with you and maybe
Yeah.
sort of ask you a question or two,
Yes.
is that available? Are you on? I know
Yes.
you've sort of gone sort of off the radar a bit
Yeah,
for a
no.
while. Are you
Yeah.
on LinkedIn?
Yeah,
Are
LinkedIn.
you're
If you
yeah.
go LinkedIn/Andrew Hulbert, you'll find
I'll
me
put a
on
link
there.
to it in
Yes,
the
put a
show
link to it
notes.
as well.
If anyone
I'm
wants to
really
get-
happy. Sorry, go
Yeah,
on, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I'm just saying, if
Yeah.
someone wants to get in touch
Yeah.
with you, they can do via
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Send you a message on LinkedIn and say,
Yeah.
"Can we jump on a quick call?" or
Yeah.
something like that.
Absolutely.
Because I am sure a lot of people tuning into this
Yeah.
will be inspired by your story and maybe wouldn't
Yeah.
mind 20 minutes of your time
Yes.
just to have
Absolutely.
a chat.
You'd be amazing how many people ask me for investment now.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
I've been pitched some of the most weird and wacky businesses I've ever heard of, and some of them I love, and some of them I just think this is never going to work.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a nice guy. I'm trying to not be too busy, but
Yeah,
reach out on LinkedIn, send me a
sure.
direct message on there, and I'm sure we can have a chat with some people because I love the story and people have their own stories, and
Sure.
you never know when there's opportunities. I do have some interesting business opportunities right now, but really I'm looking to invest, and that's it.
Yeah.
I can be a representative, but not a runner of those businesses.
Sure.
But and look, just thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, this
Pleasure.
is a great. You're a great person to chat to. I've hardly felt like we spent any time in here at
Yeah.
all. It's probably a very long podcast now, but yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity.
It's been so valuable.
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you so much. Appreciate it.